Welcome. Today I will talk about my game against the Spanish #1 chess player Francisco Vallejo Pons, who has been the Spanish #1 for the better part of the last 20 years and is an extremely strong player who's still rated above 2700. This is actually the second time I played against him in classical chess, where the first time was during the World Youth Chess Championship under 18, in which he beat me in the first round, and then went on to become the World Youth Champion under 18 in the same year. So the second game was played in the Bundesliga, and he opened the game with a move c4 and went for a line that has been played against me quite a bit, and which is a line that also exemplifies my opening problems. So yeah, I have quite a few games in this line, and there were many games in which I had problems out of the opening, especially against stronger players. I played d5, and after c takes d, knight takes d, he now went for the move e4. So there are a lot of different alternatives here. You can go d4, you can go e3, you can go g3, and so on. But in this game, Paco played the move e4. And the idea is that after the seemingly normal move, knight takes c3, with the idea to transpose to a Grunfeld, let's say after b takes c and g6, white has the option of just taking back d takes c, and after queen d1, king d1. I think this is a position which is known to be slightly better for white, because black has already this exposed pawn on c5, and which is quite unpleasant to play for black, but it's nothing too special as well. So you can play that, but it's better for white. So instead, I went for the most principled move, the move knight to b4, and Paco played bishop c4, which is the main line. And now after knight d3 check, king e2, knight f4 check, king f1, black has the option of going back to d3 or of playing knight d6, which is what I did in the game. Yeah, so in this position, there were a few more recent games, one of which I also have shown you in my channel, the game against Jan Timman, who played the plan with h4, but Francisco played the older plan, the plan with b4. This also leads to extremely sharp positions, and black has two moves, either c takes b4 or g6. And yeah, I didn't really prepare at all for this line, so during the game I thought myself, okay, I'm going to play g6 because the c takes b4 is even more concrete than g6. But it turns out that g6 can also become extremely concrete, as my opponent took on e6 and now played b takes c. So white is down a pawn, but white is up a pawn, but black gets some counterplay here after the moves d4, knight c6, bishop e3. So this seems to be some beginning of some theoretical line in which black usually goes queen a5. And then after, let's say, rook c1, long castles, a very complicated position arises with chances for both sides. So instead of doing that, I already made a mistake here. So I was out of book and I started thinking on my own, which didn't produce the result I would have liked. And I went for bishop c4 check first to prevent d5, and then queen a5. Yeah, and after queen a5, he also just played rook c1, and now I already gave this check with the bishop on c4, which turns out to be not ideal in one line that is going to appear on the board pretty soon. So actually this position is already very bad for me, maybe even lost. And I now started calculating, and I saw that the move f5 seems to give me some good counter chances. But now there's a very concrete line, and maybe you can try to find it with white right now, and you can try to pause the video and find the best sequence for white. Well, the sequence starts with the move b5. And this allows me to take the knight on c3. So he attacks my knight and prepares maybe something like knight d4. So I'm pretty much forced to take on c3. And now after d takes c, takes c, he has the nice move queen to c2, attacking both of these bishops, both the bishop on c3, and if this bishop is removed, he can take the bishop on c4. When I played the move f5, I had foreseen this sequence, and I thought, well, I can just go rook d8 right here with the intention he can't take on c3, because then obviously after takes rook d1, he gets mated. So I thought after rook d8, I should be doing okay. At least that was my hope. I mean, the whole construction with the two bishops looks a bit shaky. If I get 2 or 3 more moves in and I can remove the bishop, I can also be better as black, right? So therefore he played a very strong move, h4, creating luft for the king. And it also has a second idea, which we're going to see in a second. Yeah, also, of course, this renews the threat of taking on c3. So I have to defend against this with rook to d3, protecting the bishop. But now, yeah, he played another very strong move, the move bishop to d4. The issue is that if I take the bishop with my bishop, he can just go queen takes c4, and he now attacks the rook and the bishop. And if I go and play something like bishop b2, yeah, then there are multiple ways for him of playing here. I think he can also take on d3, but computer gives as the strongest move the move knight to e5, threatening both queen f7 and knight to d3. And now if I take back on e5, he takes on d3. And here's an exchange up, and yeah, it's in a winning position. So bishop takes d4 is not helping me very much. He threatens, of course, bishop takes c3, so the only move which I can play is rook takes d4. And now he just took on d4, and after takes queen d4, he's an exchange up. And yeah, if I don't have anything very quick, then he's just going to win. So I thought I have a strong move here, namely the move queen to d2. Now I'm hitting f2. And actually, even after playing queen d2, I was not completely sure that I'm lost here. Only after his next move, I was sure that I'm not going to get any points in this game. So maybe you can pause the video again for a second and try to find the best move for white here. Yeah, the best move for white is a move which I think is quite typical for Paco's play. Very creative way of bringing pieces into the game. And playing with a very good harmony of the pieces here. And this is the move rook to h3. On the one hand, of course, it prepares something like rook b3, which can then be followed by rook b8. But on the other hand, it creates again luft for the king. So the king can go to h1 and will have a very, very safe place on h1. So therefore, after rook h3, I thought the game is over. But I still, of course, played some moves in order to prolong the game a little bit. And yeah, the move that I played was f takes e. But he now played it quite precise and very calm, just into h1. And yeah, now the problem is I can still not castle because of his queen on c4. And I'm just busted. Yeah, so maybe the most stubborn move in this position would be the move bishop to e5, at least protecting the b8 square, but of course this is also just completely lost. So instead I went for rook f8, trying to get some counterplay on f2. But he played it now very calm, removed the rook from c1 to b1, because this rook is attacked in many lines by the queen. And therefore it's nice to remove the rook to have the queen free as well. Of course, he also threatens rook to b8. So I took on f2, and he just played queen g8, check. Of course, if I go king d7, he just has a mate in 1 with rook b7. So I can't do that. And after the move which I played in the game, rook f8, yeah, my idea was that rook b8 does not work. So if he goes rook b8, then I suddenly have king d7, and if he takes, I can even mate him here. Yeah, so that's not what he wants. Check, check, and checkmate. Yeah, so it was not yet too soon to go wrong by playing rook b8 check, but of course such a strong player is not going to fall for such a simple trap, and he just played queen to e6, threatening rook b8 mate. I could prevent this for the time being with bishop b2. Now he just went rook b3, bringing the last piece into the game and threatening rook b8 mate, and I can't really do anything about that. So I decided to play queen f4, take the b8 square, but now he can just take on b2 with the rook from b3. And the idea is that after queen h4, which occurred in the game, he just went king to g1, and this rook now protects the f2 square, so I have no perpetual. And he's now threatening rook to b8 with a mate, and therefore the game is over. And I resigned. So I think this game is a little bit of a standard example of my losses against players of that level with black. And in the next video, I will try to talk a bit more about it, and I will try to make the point that it would be very helpful for me to improve my openings as black as a result of my results against such players with the black pieces. So that's it for today, and thanks a lot for watching.
When you have stress, play chess. When you fall on your ass, play chess for a real deal. For Christians